your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us for a look back at Alberta this week. At least 72 wildfires in the province have forced about 3,700 people from their homes. As of Friday, evacuation orders had been issued for rural areas west and southwest of Edmonton. Thousands of people in Drayton Valley and the surrounding area were told to evacuate immediately late Thursday night because of an out-of-control blaze. The Alberta government says wildfire has destroyed at least 20 homes, an RCMP detachment, and a store in a northern community. As of Friday, 3 fires are burning in the area of Fox Lake, about 550 kilometers north of Edmonton. A Calgary street preacher who's been in the headlines since the start of the pandemic found out his fate this week. Arthur Pawlowski was found guilty on 2 charges related to his role in protests near the Coutts border crossing, which encouraged a blockade that lasted more than 2 weeks during the COVID-19 restrictions. The judge found Pawlowski guilty of mischief and breaching a release order. He also faces a 3rd charge under the Alberta Critical Infrastructure Defence Act of willfully damaging or destroying essential infrastructure. For his part, Pawlowski says although he's been found guilty on 2 charges, that will not silence him.
I love this country, and I came to this country for freedom, and that freedom right now has been stolen from us. So I'm not worried, actually. I know that sooner or later justice shall prevail. I have been in a court of appeals multiple times. I'll do just that. I'll keep fighting. I guess in an interesting way, we are in a fight no matter what. I was hoping that this ordeal will be over and we can just move on. I mean, there is no pandemic, there is no restrictions, there are no longer mandates. Why can't we just move on with our lives? But obviously, this corrupted government doesn't want to move on.
The case is scheduled to return to court on May 24th. If you're in Alberta, there's no doubt you've already begun to see election signs go up on private property, as well as ramped up door-knocking efforts to get your vote. The writ officially dropped Monday, signaling the start of the 2023 Alberta provincial election, which will be held May 29th. For weeks now, both Smith's United Conservatives and Rachel Notley's New Democrats have been unofficially campaigning. United Conservative Party leader Danielle Smith appeared in Calgary to introduce a new permanent tax cut if her party is elected.
So today, I'm pleased to announce a re-elected United Conservative government will create a new 8% tax bracket on income under $60,000. This means that every Albertan earning over $60,000 or more will save $760. That is $1,500 per family. Albertans earning less than $60,000 will see a 20% reduction to their provincial tax bill under this tax cut. This permanent billion-dollar tax cut will provide meaningful, timely tax relief to Albertans at a time when they need it most.
And according to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, this is a great news for Alberta taxpayers because it would benefit people earning both over and under the $60K threshold. Chris Sims is the Alberta director of the CTF and breaks down exactly what the new tax bracket would look like.
What they're proposing to do is to create a lower income tax bracket here in Alberta so that anyone earning $60,000 or less would have an 8% income tax. So that's a big tax cut. For folks under that $60,000 threshold, the party says that this would equate to a 20% income tax cut.
Sims says with the new tax bracket, people earning more than $60,000 per year would save more than $700 per person per year. Alberta NDP leader Rachel Notley also officially launched her campaign. Notley promises to hire more healthcare workers, fix primary care through coordinated teams of health professionals, and not roll back medically insured services. In total, Notley says 300,000 Albertans will be getting a doctor through 40 new healthcare clinics and 4,000 new primary healthcare professionals.
It will ensure that all Albertans have access to a family doctor. Not 2 weeks or months from when they need one, but in a matter of days. We'll make sure that these transformational changes and our work will begin right away. We will move to support flexible hours for family doctors and health professionals across the province. Extending hours to include evenings and weekends is something that health professionals have actually been asking us for years.
We need to take a quick break, but when we return, some political analysis, plus a longtime MLA quits the race, and allegations of federal interference in provincial elections. All that's next. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Polls suggest the battleground for the Alberta vote is clearly defined, with UCP supporters generally focused on the economy and money issues, and NDP supporters focused on health, education, and social programs. But political science professor Laurie Williams disagrees, saying all Albertans are concerned with all of these issues, particularly healthcare.
I think a lot will depend, especially for those voters who are still undecided, who don't really see a home in either of the parties for them right now. Some of the answers to the questions they have might give them the reassurance that they need. But, you know, there are a lot of areas in the province where there are a lot of questions around healthcare, and Danielle Smith has appointed 3 panels on healthcare that aren't going to be reporting to her until after the election. So I'm expecting there to be lots of questions about what she actually stands for. And I think there'll be a lot of questions about where both parties, both leaders stand, what their promises are, what it's going to cost in the final analysis, because they're not just talking about what they're going to spend, but they're also talking about reducing taxes, for example. Then what's that going to mean for folks that are struggling with affordability right now?
There's been talk of foreign influence in federal elections, but what about federal influence in provincial elections? Earlier this week, I spoke with columnist Brian Lilly, who suggested the federal government might be up to something in Alberta. There have been some flashpoints between the Alberta Premier and UCP leader Danielle Smith and the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So do you expect Trudeau or his team to get involved and try to help defeat Smith and elect Rachel Notley in the NDP? What do you think will happen there?
I've already seen some top Liberals making comments about how Rachel Notley's great, how Rachel Notley should be reelected. And so I wouldn't be surprised to find out that there's some common ground there. Of course, there's no Liberal Party in Alberta. And so where do those Liberals go? Well, some join up with the UCP, or previously had been members of the Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta.
Yeah, there is a very small Liberal Party in Alberta.
Yeah, but it's not a factor. I mean, I remember covering the debates and feeling sad for the Liberal leader there. Like they don't win seats and they're not going anywhere. So what do federal Liberals do? They tend to go to one of the 2 parties that will win, depending on how they view things. And the current iteration of the federal Liberal Party under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is very much closer to the NDP than the old blue Liberal that if you were Jean Chrétien, you might have been aligned with. So I could see some top Liberals, especially from Alberta, looking to help Rachel Notley. I can also see a much smaller amount, either staying silent or quietly helping the UCP. So don't expect direct involvement, but watch for where key players in Alberta federal Liberal politics are going.
Earlier this week, Albertans heard from Drew Barnes that he would not be seeking re-election in the riding of Cypress Medicine Hat. BCN's Hal Roberts chatted with the former independent MLA to learn about his next steps and what to expect leading up to the election on May 29th. Have a look.
What led to your decision not to run again?
Essentially, my constituents, Cypress Medicine Hatters and Southern Albertans, were telling me that they didn't see a vehicle for one of the mainstream parties providing principled, consistent, effective representation that matched their values. And so at this point in time, I thought it was best for me to look for effectiveness, to look for the things that are important, like faith, families, and freedom, through a different means.
So what is next for you as you leave public life?
For me, I'm going forward with my political foundation, my political action committee, and I'm going to continue the best as I can to be a voice for the things that are important to Albertans.
Now, what are your thoughts on the upcoming election? Many political experts say it's simply too close to call. They say the NDP has Edmonton, the UCP has rural Alberta, and Calgary is the true battleground. How do you see it?
How the two parties are very, very close, but it's because the two parties have crowded into the middle. We've got platforms that look fairly similar. We have the NDP trying to soften what can be a very devastating socialist policy, and we've got the UCP and Danielle Smith with corporate cronyism, $330 million to Calgary billionaires. They're out today with more welfare, more directing the economy, rather than a truly democratic, truly community-driven economy from the bottom up, from the grassroots up. So yeah, the two parties are similar. So why wouldn't it be close?
After the break, the not-so-friendly frenzy between the media and the two major party leaders in Alberta. That's next. Keep it right here. Albertans are in the thick of it right now with polls, lawn signs, door knockers, and the she said of prairie politics. To talk more about the seat distributions and other terms that we only hear during election season, here's my recent conversation with our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson. So Tyler, the polls show that Rachel Notley and Danielle Smith are neck to neck, although the seat distribution tends to favor Smith over Notley, right? So on the ground, what does that look like? Calgary seems to be that real battleground area, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the polling sort of shows them within a couple percentage points of each other, like 47 to 44, 47 to 45, that kind of thing. So very, very close in terms of vote intention at this point. But you're right, the seat distribution does make this a little bit easier for the UCP to come up with a majority here. Edmonton tends to be the New Democrat stronghold, and rural and small town Alberta tends to be the UCP stronghold, which leaves us with Calgary. And Calgary went to the New Democrats in 2015. Went to the UCP in 2019. So the question is sort of going to be, what can each party do to pick up votes in Calgary in this election? Because that is, other than a few seats maybe in sort of the donut around Edmonton, a couple seats in, Lethbridge maybe in Fort McMurray, most of those are likely to go to the Conservatives. So a little bit of electoral math I expect happening in the sort of planning rooms for the folks behind these campaigns.
Mm-hmm. So is this where we're likely to see more of that door knocking campaigning as the two vie to be the next premier?
That seems likely. Yeah, both parties are planning on having their actual election headquarters in Calgary, and I do expect the sort of bulk of it to play out in Calgary. There's going to be campaigns in Edmonton, especially in the sort of ring of the suburb ring in sort of St. Albert, Sherwood Park, those kinds of areas. But no doubt the biggest focus, the most door knocking, is going to be in the Calgary area.
Everyone's talking about NDP and UCP, but there are a number of smaller parties as well that are running in this election. Can you talk about that a little bit? How will they fare against the NDP and UCP? They're kind of the big dogs here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the safe money's on them not really mattering all that much. In previous elections, we've talked about there being threats from the left to the New Democrats and threats from the right to the United Conservatives. There was a period of time there when it looked like maybe some of the independence parties were going to pull some votes away from the UCP.
Right, almost split that vote a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there in the past, of course, there have been votes pulled from the New Democrats by, say, the Alberta Liberal Party, the Alberta Party, who, even had people in the legislature relatively recently. So, these parties do still exist. They are still out there. But most of the polling shows them at like 1 or 2% of the popular vote. So pretty unlikely, I think, that you're going to see any of those parties have a really big impact. I think most people on the left and the right are going to sort of look at how close this election could be and just sort of line up behind the biggest players and say, look, I'm not going to vote Alberta Party if that risks a United Conservative winning in this riding, kind of thing. So I for better or worse, I think those parties in this election at least are mostly non-players. That could change in the future, of course. Parties do ebb and flow and make comebacks, but at the moment I would say with, I think some confidence that they're not going to have a huge impact.
Last week, Smith faced more criticism for refusing to take follow-up questions from reporters. Now, Tyler, as journalists, this is a serious matter, isn't it?
It's a bit of a pain, yeah. You ask a politician a question, and usually you expect a follow-up. Often they'll sort of slide away from your first question. That's just sort of part of the business, and you try and pin them down a little bit with your follow-up. And Danielle Smith has sort of changed this. It's not a hard and fast rule. I don't think it's written in stone anywhere, but it's sort of convention that you take one question, one follow-up. And the Premier is now taking only one question, which is a bit of a problem. And of course, it's not totally clear to me if that's going to continue on the campaign trail when there's going to be tons of questions. And Rachel Notley's actually found herself in another similar sort of issue, and she's not been taking questions from certain media outlets, the Western Standard news magazine among them. So both of the contenders for the Premier's office playing a little bit of hardball with the media in the last week or so.
From hardball with the media to your health and family budget. Up next, we hear from incumbent Nathan Neudorf and former City Councillor Rob Miyashiro as they square off over ideas for your health. Keep it right here.
How are we going to find these allied professionals and health professionals? Well, you have to train them. And we're going to have to train them in Alberta.
If we can be recognized as that center, that hub for the South, and the care capabilities possible here, then I absolutely support EMS dispatch being brought here.
A big election season affection is healthcare. This past week, we spoke with the two men vying for the seat in Lethbridge East, UCP candidate Nathan Neudorf and NDP candidate Rob Miyashiro. We spoke to them about their party's objectives for our provincial public healthcare system. Rob Miyashiro agreed that the doctor and healthcare workers shortage is across North America. Miyashiro says Alberta needs to start developing an education stream to meet our provincial needs. There seems to be a shortage of healthcare professionals throughout North America. So where would you find the additional medical personnel to operate these facilities?
That also combined with our goals on post-secondary education. So you're right. How are we going to find these allied professionals and health professionals? Well, you have to train them. And we're going to have to train them in Alberta. Well, first, obviously, there's going to be a recruitment strategy released right away by our leader this week or early next week about what our recruitment strategies for healthcare, right? But furthermore to that is to have a sustainable system. You need us to train health professionals in Alberta, then have them stay in Alberta. We don't want to train them here and have them move somewhere else. We have a college university in Lethbridge that we need to fund spaces and fund the instructors to make sure we can train those people here in Lethbridge. Because, and this ties into a whole bunch of other things, because obviously that, and people in Lethbridge know, the college university are two of our biggest employers. So we add spaces for students, we employ more people, we train more people, we have health professionals that can stay in our community and serve our community. And if not our immediate community, they'll stay in Alberta, hopefully, right? And so all those things tie together. And that's how big an economic driver healthcare is in our educational system as well, right? We need to make sure that we're funding our college and university to the levels that they were at before the UCP cut a bunch of their funding, tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the post-secondary thing, because I was going to ask you any ideas on how to entice more local students to go into medicine so that something like this doesn't happen again.
Well, I think that's something that starts when the students are in school. And I also think, you just step kind of into another thing about having a curriculum that deals with real life issues, a curriculum that's going to serve the kids for their future as well, and not ideological based and based on here's the way life works. If you can get kids interested in STEM, science, technology, engineering, medical things early enough and have a pathway.
Under the umbrella of healthcare, the need for local EMS dispatch is still a concern in 4 regions of the province, including Lethbridge. Hal Roberts spoke with UCP candidate Nathan Neudorf about the issue.
Many mayors in our province are wanting to see the return of local EMS dispatch, including Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Hagan. Will that be coming anytime soon?
Well, this is part of that whole conversation that I've been working on for 4 years, is recognizing the Chinook Health region, the Chinook Regional Hospital as a hub, and what services should it provide. Right now, I forget the exact level, whether we're a tier 3 or tier 4, and the next level up would be a tier 2. Though it depends on those capacities and availabilities in the hospital, which include some of those cardiac and thoracic surgeries and so on and so forth. If we can be recognized as that center, that hub for the South, and the care capabilities possible here, then I absolutely support EMS dispatch being brought here to service this hub. We service a huge population in southern Alberta, reaching into southeastern BC and southwestern Saskatchewan. I believe that investment needs to be made so that we can serve the people of this region more appropriately. And then that dispatch piece really works with that integrated model to provide those services that we need.
Yeah, I know a lot of mayors have concerned about the ambulance times and the delays getting to certain homes, when people are in distress, so it's a real issue here. Nathan, Party Leader Daniel Smith says if the UCP is reelected, there won't be any tax hikes. And now there's also talk about tax breaks for Albertans, especially with all of the oil and gas revenues coming in. Can you talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. That's one of our key platform commitments, is that those who earn up to $60,000 will be in a new tax bracket of only 8%. So every Albertan who earns less than $60,000 will receive a 20% reduction in their provincial income tax. And every Albertan who earns over $60,000 will save at least $760 per year in their provincial taxing. So a real tax break, helping people on both sides of that threshold, whether they earn less or earn more, they'll really see a benefit of keeping more dollars in their pocket. So we're really excited about that commitment.
Coming up after the break, we'll take a look at the local headlines that happened across the southern Alberta region. Welcome back. A Ukrainian Lethbridge resident is now the proud recipient of the ASET CEO Award, otherwise known as the Association of Science and Engineering Technology Professionals of Alberta. Mila Wagner, a civil engineering technology professional, moved from Kyiv, Ukraine to Alberta 2 years after Russia's invasion of Crimea in 2014. Video journalist Micah Quinn spoke with Wagner about her journey from Ukraine to Lethbridge.
Last year, Wagner devoted a good chunk of her time to promoting several initiatives from ASET, which support engineering technology professionals who are newcomers and refugees from Ukraine, as well as other countries.
She was an interesting story for us because she found out after the fact, after she had come here and enrolled in Lethbridge College, that she probably would have been qualified to sit our competencies-based assessment and our certification exam, and probably would have been qualified to get a designation as a CET initially, but she hadn't heard about it. And that was a really interesting thing that we wanted to make sure that through her efforts, we could help people like her who came to the province become aware of the fact that there is a level playing field.
Wagner is now married and is working for an engineering consulting firm in Lethbridge while raising her son, Nikita. She mentioned she has also provided a haven for other relatives and friends who are fleeing the war-torn country of Ukraine and coming to Alberta as the conflict against Russia rages on. Earlier in April, Wagner took the oath of Canadian citizenship with her son at a ceremony in Calgary. Wagner told us her parents are still in Ukraine, and it's been incredibly hard knowing that they are in constant danger due to the war. Last year in June, there was a missile attack at a shopping mall in Kremenchuk, Ukraine, right where her parents live.
I want so much to move them to Canada as soon as possible, and I keep my hopes up so I would be able to do so.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
A University of Lethbridge student has started the Lethbridge Power Soccer program. It helps those with physical disabilities become more involved in the culture and recreation of soccer and sports. The Alberta Cerebral Palsy Sports Association has also given funding to cover the cost of gym rental and bumpers for the power chairs. Once again, here's Micah Quinn, who chatted with Chase Petruska about his research at the U of L and why he wanted to start the program.
It's kind of like a form of escapism for them. For the 2 hours that we run the program, they're more than just an individual in a wheelchair. They're an athlete. They're playing a sport.
Chase Petruska told us when he came down to Lethbridge for his undergraduate degree in neuroscience at the University of Lethbridge, he noticed that there weren't any sports for those who have physical disabilities and are in wheelchairs or power chairs.
I just thought there'd be a good opportunity to start a power chair soccer program here, and then luckily I was able to go under Dr. Gerlinda Metz within her lab, and I was able to start doing research on individuals with physical disabilities, looking at their stress response, their mental health, how COVID affected them.
Petruska also coaches his brother, who has cerebral palsy, in the Calgary Power Hockey League, which helped spur him to pursue his research further.
They've not been dealt the best hands, and yet they still come out here, they still play these sports, and they still smile, they're still happy, and it really impacts me in a huge way that I use to motivate me within my research.
Petruska outlined what the results were for his honors and master's thesis.
For my results regarding my honors thesis, we found that individuals with physical disabilities were more susceptible to high-impact life stress situations, such as COVID. And then individuals with non-family caretakers, they recorded more depressive and anxiety symptoms and showed a decrease in activity, whereas individuals with family caretakers did not record those changes. Within my master's thesis, we're looking at the effect of metabolites in relation to individuals' brains and their physical disability, and then looking at if power chair soccer or power chair sports in general can build resilience and help decrease that susceptibility to high-impact stressful situations.
Petruska mentioned the project operates out of the North Gym in the University of Lethbridge, and it's free to drop in for a session. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Lethbridge is one step closer to being able to host a special event in our city's downtown. Lethbridge City Council voted unanimously on Tuesday to provide a letter of support for the conditional approval of $210,000 of cash and in-kind contributions to support the Play On Canada hockey event. This means $70,000 would be funded annually from 2024 through 2026 from the Major Community Event Grant budget. The funding will depend upon Play On Canada receiving its requested provincial or federal funding. Have you ever wondered what services are available for local families? Well, after the break, we find out more about that from Meryl Kiani, the Executive Director for the Lethbridge Family Centre. Stay with us.